What would you do if you lost everything in an instant? Sofia lay in bed, eyes wide open in the dark. The clock read 3 in the morning. She couldn't sleep, her thoughts trapped in an emptiness she couldn't explain. She got up and walked to the window. Outside, the city never stopped. Cars, horns, lights. The world kept moving, but inside her there was only silence. Her own voice echoed softly, almost as if she were afraid to hear the answer. Is this all there is? Work, pay bills, wait for time to pass, and in the end just disappear? That question wouldn't let her rest. Sofia was 32, with a stable life and an organized routine. To everyone else, it seemed like she was on the right path. But deep inside, she felt she merely existed, without ever truly living. The next morning, Sofia rushed to work. The subway was crowded, weary faces bumping into one another, yet no one truly seeing each other. She felt invisible in that sea of strangers. Holding her briefcase tightly, she stared at her phone, as if it were the only thing keeping her standing. At the office, the incessant noise of keyboards and ringing phones filled every corner. Between a pile of papers and a forgotten cup of cold coffee on her desk, a coworker approached with a playful grin. Sofia, you never show up at the parties. What's your secret? A double life? A hidden boyfriend? She forced a quick smile, without lifting her eyes from the screen. Nothing like that. I'm just trying to survive the week. That night, the silence in her apartment was deafening. Sofia heated up a frozen meal, left the plate aside, and lay down on the couch with the TV on some random channel. No sound seemed to fill the emptiness. On her way home in the elevator, she ran into Daniel, her neighbor. He gave her a warm smile. Good evening, Sofia. Always in a rush, huh? She only nodded. But for a brief moment, that kind look was the first detail that broke the monotony of her gray world. Sofia breathed, worked, walked. But deep down she didn't live. And soon she would discover that time waits for no one. Sofia was sitting in the hospital waiting room. The clock seemed frozen, and the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the corridors. She clutched the strap of her bag tightly, trying to contain her anxiety, until the door opened and the doctor called her in. Inside the office, he spoke calmly, but the seriousness in his voice revealed the weight of his words. Sofia, your test showed some changes we need to monitor. It's not a definitive diagnosis, but this condition could affect your quality of life, and also your future. Sofia felt her heart race. Her mouth went dry, and her voice came out weak, almost a whisper. Does that mean I might not have as much time as I thought? The doctor paused. His eyes carried empathy, but no words could soften that revelation. Later, Sofia walked alone through the city. The lights shone brightly, but to her everything seemed blurred, distant. The sound of cars blended with her own quickened breathing. She stopped in front of a store window and stared at her reflection in the glass, a face lost between fear and disbelief. That's when she heard a familiar voice. Sofia, are you okay? You seem somewhere else. It was Daniel, the neighbor. He watched her with genuine concern. Sofia tried to brush it off, but her voice faltered. Just tired. Nothing important. Daniel didn't press, but his eyes showed he wasn't fully convinced. Still, he simply smiled gently and said, All right, but if you ever want to talk, I live right over there. Sometimes talking helps. Sofia forced a faint smile, but as soon as he walked away, silent tears streamed down her face. In that moment, she understood her life had changed. Time, which once felt infinite, now carried unbearable weight. And it was up to her to decide. Let fear consume her, or finally learn to live. In the days that followed, Sofia felt her world collapsing. Hours at work dragged on, and nothing seemed to make sense. The diagnosis still echoed in her mind like a crushing weight. She tried to act normal, but inside she felt as though she were falling into an abyss. At night, in the silence of her bedroom, tears soaked her pillow. Her chest ached not only from fear of the illness, but from a bitter realization. Until that moment, Her life had been nothing more than a series of identical days, lived on autopilot. Unable to bear it alone, she picked up the phone and called her mother. The voice on the other end brought immediate comfort, but also opened the door to pain. "Sweetheart, are you all right? You've seemed so distant lately." Sofia hesitated, swallowed hard, and the truth slipped out as a confession. "Mom, what if my time runs out before I even start living?" There was silence. On the other end, her mother took a deep breath, searching for strength. "Sofia, don't let fear paralyze you. Maybe this is the very moment you need to discover who you truly are, and what it really means to live." The words struck deeply, but still the darkness felt stronger. Sofia hung up with the sense that her life was hanging by a thread. That night, alone, she faced the mirror. Her eyes were red, her face weary. She barely recognized herself. She touched the glass with her fingertips and whispered, voice breaking, "Who am I if I never learn to live?" That night, Sofia was alone in her apartment. The city lights flickered through the window, reminders that time never stops. She sat on the couch with the doctor's letter still in her hands. For a few seconds, the silence weighed heavier than any diagnosis. Memories began to flood her mind. Missed opportunities, promises she made to herself but never kept, dreams she had always postponed for someday. But what if that day never came? She suddenly stood up, almost on impulse, and walked to the bedroom mirror. Her reflection looked like that of a stranger, a woman living half a life, hidden behind responsibilities, obligations, and fears. "What have you done with your life, Sofia?" she murmured, staring at herself. "If everything ended tomorrow, would it have been worth it? Am I really not good enough?" Her heart raced, but now not from fear. Something new was stirring inside, a fire she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she didn't want to just survive. She wanted to live. She pulled an old notebook from the drawer, the one where, years ago, she had written down dreams she never had the courage to pursue. The pages were yellowed, but each word felt like a calling. Travel, learn, love truly, feel without restraint. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they came with a smile. "No more waiting," she whispered. "From now on, I'm going to learn to live." And there, alone, Sofia took the first step toward turning pain into purpose. The next morning, Sofia woke up different. The weight she carried was still there, but now there was also a determination she hadn't felt in years. She looked out the window, and even the blue of the sky seemed more vivid. She decided that this would be the first day of her new life. At work, something had changed too. Her colleagues noticed Sofia no longer had the same dull look. She smiled, asked more questions, showed curiosity about people. When Daniel found her in the break room, it was he who commented, "You seem different today." "Different how?" she asked, surprised. "Like you found a reason to shine. You know, like someone who finally decided to live for real." Daniel's words touched her deeply. She only smiled, a little shy. But inside she knew he had seen the truth. That same day after work, Sofia didn't go straight home. She took a bus to the beach, something she hadn't done since her youth. She walked barefoot on the sand, feeling the cold water on her feet, and closed her eyes, breathing deeply. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like the most liberating thing in the world. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she pulled the notebook from her bag and began writing a new list. It was no longer just a collection of distant dreams. It was a commitment. Things like, dance without fear, travel somewhere unknown, say what I feel without hesitation. And almost without realizing it, she also wrote, allow myself to love. The next day, Daniel invited her for coffee. It wasn't just a casual chat between neighbors, but something lighter, more intimate. And for the first time, Sofia didn't say no. She sat across from him, listening to his stories, and laughed in a way she hadn't in years. And there, between shared secrets and lingering glances, grew the seed of something that could transform not only her life, but also the heart of someone willing to walk by her side. The first days of change were intense. Sofia felt alive, but she soon realized it wouldn't be so simple to leave behind old habits and fears. One morning, upon arriving at work, she was handed a pile of urgent tasks. The fast pace, the demands, everything seemed to drag her back into her old routine of stress and silence. During a meeting, anxiety struck her chest like a punch. For a moment, she thought, "Can I really change? Or am I just fooling myself?" That night, she sat on the couch and stared at the notebook where she had written her list. The words seemed to mock her. Then, in the silence, she remembered the coffee with Daniel, the sincere smile, the way he looked at her not with pity, but with admiration. The next morning, she decided to open up to him. "Daniel, I'm afraid," she said, her voice almost breaking. "Afraid of what?" "Of starting over, of not being ready, of losing everything again." He took a deep breath and replied firmly, "Sofia, change isn't a leap, it's one step at a time. And you don't have to walk alone." His words stayed etched in her heart. Still, the challenges didn't stop there. When she visited her mother one weekend, she was welcomed with concern. "You look tired. Are you sure you're okay?" Sofia smiled, trying to hide it. But inside, she felt the weight of not being able to reveal the whole truth about her health. It was a dilemma: protect those she loved from suffering, or finally share the burden. Between relapses of insecurity, new responsibilities at work, and the constant fear of the condition she carried in silence, Sofia realized her journey would not be a straight line. But she also understood something important. Every obstacle was an invitation to reaffirm her decision to live. And deep down, she knew she was only at the beginning of this trial by fire. The secret Sofia carried was beginning to weigh more heavily than the condition itself. Every smile in front of her mother, every conversation with Daniel without telling the whole truth. It was like walking with a shadow by her side. On a rainy night, after an exhausting day, she met Daniel at the same cafe where it had all begun. The city seemed suspended under the water pounding against the glass. Sofia took a deep breath, her hands trembling around the hot cup. "Daniel, I need to tell you something." He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "You can tell me anything." The words spilled out like a confession bottled up for years. "I received a serious diagnosis. The doctors don't know exactly how much time I have, but they said I need to change my life if I want a chance. That's why I've been different, why I've been trying to make the most of every moment." The silence between them lasted a few eternal seconds. Sofia lowered her eyes, expecting pity or fear. But Daniel held her hand firmly. "You're not alone. I'm not going anywhere." Tears streamed down her face, not from sadness but relief. For the first time, she didn't have to carry the weight alone. Days later, she gathered the courage to tell her mother as well. They sat in the living room, the clock marking the slow rhythm of her revelation. "Mom, I need to be honest with you." Her voice faltered, but the sincerity did not. Upon hearing it, her mother was stunned, her eyes brimming with tears. Then she hugged her tightly, as if trying to shield her from the world. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." In that moment, Sofia realized, true freedom was not only in living fully, but in living truthfully. And that truth, though harsh, made room for love to finally come in. After the revelation, something changed deeply in Sofia. It was as if the weight suffocating her had dissolved. Now there was space to breathe, to smile, to dream again. The days remained full of uncertainty, but for the first time, she was not alone. Daniel was by her side, encouraging each step, reminding her that every moment could be a new beginning. One Saturday morning, he invited her to hike up a nearby hill. The wind blew strong, the horizon opened in golden tones, and as Sofia looked at the vastness before her, she felt something awaken within. "It's beautiful, but even more because I'm here," she said with a timid smile. Daniel held her hand and replied, "And this is only the beginning. You still have so much to live, Sofia. Don't let anything take that away from you." She began dedicating herself to small changes, taking better care of herself, writing in her notebook all the things she dreamed of doing, calling friends she had left behind, revisiting places she always loved. Every simple gesture became a victory, Little by little, she began to realize the diagnosis wasn't a sentence, but a calling. Not to give up, but to awaken. On one of the notebook's pages, she wrote in big letters, "If time is short, let it be intense. If life is uncertain, let it be lived fully." And in that phrase, Sofia found her new identity. No longer the woman imprisoned by fear, but the woman who had learned to live. Time passed, and Sofia was no longer the same woman she had been. She carried scars, yes, but also a light in her eyes that no one could extinguish. Each day had become an opportunity to leave a mark, not with grand gestures, but with actions that touched hearts. She returned to teaching languages, something she had always loved, but now she taught more than words. She taught courage, the importance of not waiting for tomorrow to be happy. In each student she planted a seed. One night, sitting beside Daniel on the porch, gazing at the stars, he said, "You know you changed my life, don't you?" Sofia smiled and replied, "I didn't just change yours, Daniel. Changed mine. And if that can inspire someone else, then it was all worth it." She no longer counted the days in fear of the end. She counted each moment as a victory. And with that spirit, she decided to record her experiences in letters, essays, and memories. Not to speak of pain but of transformation. Not to say goodbye, but to remind everyone that life is a gift that must not be postponed. When she wrote her last letter, she left a message simple enough to outlive generations. Time is the one thing that never returns. So don't waste it being who others expect you to be. Be who you were born to be. Learn to live, even when everything seems to say there's no time. Because life happens now. Sofia closed the notebook, looked at Daniel, and with tears in her eyes she smiled. It wasn't an ending. It was the eternal new beginning of someone who had finally learned how to live. And maybe you, listening to me now, recognize yourself in parts of Sofia's story. Maybe you too carry pains no one sees, fears that feel bigger than life itself, or the sense that time is slipping through your fingers. But remember, you're still here. And as long as there is life, there is possibility. Don't wait for the perfect moment to begin. Don't wait for everything to be in place to smile, to love, to take risks. The perfect moment is now. Tomorrow is far too uncertain to be postponed. Sofia taught us it's not about how much time we have, but what we do with it. That even in the face of pain, we can transform our story into inspiration. So I invite you, take a deep breath, look around you and ask yourself, what would I do today if I knew time was limited? If the answer moves you, then that's the path. Because in the end, the greatest victory is not to live forever. The greatest victory is to learn how to live. And if Sofia's story touched your heart, if at any moment you saw yourself in her, remember, this message cannot stop with you. Sharing stories like this is how we keep the flame of inspiration alive. How we remind one another that life is short but intense. And that every second matters. So if this video made sense to you, leave your like. It shows us it's worth continuing to bring messages that touch the soul. And if you're not yet part of this community, subscribe to the channel now. Here, every story is an invitation to see life with new eyes. With more courage, more faith, and more love. And I ask you a special favor. Activate the notification bell. That way, every time a new story is told, you'll be here with me, learning, feeling, and finding inspiration. Because in the end, we're all students of the same journey. The art of learning how to live. See you in the next video.